Last night she lay beside her husband and stared at the ceiling, not because she didn't love him, and not because he didn't love her, but somewhere between the wedding day and today, something had changed. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. His breathing was steady beside her, and for the first time, she allowed herself to think the question she had been afraid to say out loud. How can I feel this lonely when I'm married? The next morning she smiled. She greeted friends. She sang the songs. She said she was blessed. And nobody knew. Nobody knew how tired she felt. Nobody knew how much she missed him. Nobody knew how much effort it took to carry the weight of loneliness while pretending everything was fine. From the outside, everything looked good. They shared a home. They shared responsibilities. They shared a life. They still loved each other. But somehow they had stopped feeling close. And she couldn't quite explain how it happened. So she carried it quietly. She prayed. She journaled. She searched for answers. But she didn't tell anyone, because she wasn't sure how to explain what she was feeling. Every picture made her wonder. Every anniversary post, every smiling family photo, every happy marriage testimony. Little by little, she started believing she was the only one struggling. And then the lies began. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe this is normal. Maybe good wives don't need more. Maybe something is wrong with me. Those thoughts settled deep into her heart because nobody had prepared her for this part. They taught purity. They taught commitment. They taught covenant. They taught her how to prepare for the wedding day. But nobody taught her what to do when intimacy became difficult after the wedding day. Nobody taught her how to navigate loneliness inside a marriage that still looked healthy from the outside. And that's when she discovered something surprising. Her struggle wasn't unusual, her marriage wasn't broken, and she wasn't alone. For the first time in a long time, she felt a small spark of hope. The questions she couldn't ignore. For months she searched for answers, not because she was angry, not because she wanted to leave, and not because she had stopped loving her husband. She simply wanted to understand. Why did something so important feel so difficult to talk about? Why did something God created for connection often become a source of pain, confusion, and silence? As she searched, she began reflecting on everything she had learned growing up. She learned about purity. She learned about modesty. She learned about waiting. She learned how to prepare for the wedding day. But nobody taught her how to navigate intimacy after the wedding day. Nobody taught her what to do when marriage became more complicated than she expected. Nobody talked about loneliness in marriage. Nobody talked about rejection. Nobody talked about desire. Nobody talked about the seasons when connection feels difficult and two people slowly begin drifting apart. And because nobody talked about it, she felt completely unprepared when it happened to her. The silence became shame, and shame began whispering lies. Everyone else seems happy. Every other marriage looks healthy. Every other wife seems content. Why am I struggling? Why can't I just be grateful? Why do I keep wanting more? Those questions followed her everywhere, and the more she carried them, the heavier they became. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I should stop bringing it up. Maybe this is just what marriage becomes after enough years. Maybe something is wrong with me. But as she continued searching, she discovered something she never expected. Her struggle wasn't rare, it wasn't unusual, and it wasn't proof that her marriage was failing. In fact, many couples quietly carried the same struggles behind closed doors. The difference was that few people talked about it. And that's when she realized something important. The enemy wasn't always conflict. Sometimes the enemy was exhaustion. Sometimes it was stress. Sometimes it was parenting. Sometimes it was responsibilities. Sometimes it was two people trying so hard to survive life that they accidentally stopped nurturing their relationship. The problem wasn't always a lack of love. Sometimes it was simply a lack of connection. And that's when she began seeing marriage differently. Because God's vision for marriage was never emotional isolation. Marriage was designed for friendship, for vulnerability, for intimacy, for connection, for being fully known and fully loved. God never intended for husbands and wives to live as strangers sharing the same address. And as she sat with that truth, something inside her began to shift. For so long she had been asking, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? Why can't I just make peace with it? But now a different question emerged. What if we're not broken? What if we simply need a better conversation? What if healing starts with honesty? Because maybe hope doesn't begin when everything changes. Maybe hope begins when shame finally loses its voice. And for the first time in a very long time, hope felt possible. The conversation. For months, she had carried the weight alone, the questions, the loneliness, the fear, the shame, and most of all, the fear of saying something out loud that might make things worse. So she replayed the conversation in her mind over and over again. She imagined every possible response, every misunderstanding, every awkward silence, every argument. And because she was afraid, she stayed quiet. Until one night she couldn't anymore. She didn't begin with blame. She didn't begin with frustration. She didn't begin with accusations. Instead, she began with honesty. 4 simple words. Can we talk? Those 4 words became a turning point. Because healing often begins with a conversation nobody wants to have. As they sat together, she didn't say, "You never listen. You never care. You always ignore me." Instead, she said something much more vulnerable. "I miss us. I miss feeling close to you. I miss talking to you. I miss feeling connected." And for the first time in a long time, she allowed him to see what was really happening inside her heart. Tears filled her eyes, not because she wanted to hurt him, but because she was finally telling the truth. And sometimes healing begins the moment someone stops pretending everything is fine. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of defending himself, he listened, really listened. And for the first time in a long time, she stopped talking and started listening too. Because intimacy isn't only about being heard, it's also about hearing. It's about understanding the heart sitting across from you. As he began sharing, she realized there was a side of the story she had never fully seen. He wasn't distant because he didn't care. He wasn't pulling away because he didn't love her. He was overwhelmed, exhausted, burdened, carrying pressures and responsibilities he didn't know how to explain. And suddenly she realized something important. The enemy wasn't sitting across the table from her. The enemy wasn't her husband. The enemy was everything that had quietly built a wall between them. Stress, exhaustion, responsibilities, assumptions, silence. Years of small disconnections left unattended. The problem wasn't a lack of love. The problem was that life had slowly pulled them apart, while neither of them noticed it happening. And for the first time, they stopped fighting each other and started fighting for their marriage. That night didn't solve everything. There wasn't a magical breakthrough. There wasn't an instant transformation. But something important changed. Hope returned. Because healing rarely begins with dramatic moments. More often, it begins with small ones. A conversation, a walk together, a shared cup of coffee, 10 intentional minutes without distractions, a willingness to listen, a willingness to understand, a willingness to try again. Small things become big things when they are repeated consistently. And later that night, they prayed, not because they suddenly had all the answers, not because every problem had disappeared, but because they needed God's help finding their way back to each other. Together they knelt beside their bed. Together they surrendered their fears. Together they asked God to heal what had grown distant. And for the first time in a very long time, they weren't carrying the burden alone. Hope, for the first time in months, she felt something she thought she had lost. Hope, not because everything was suddenly fixed, not because every problem disappeared overnight, but because they were finally moving in the same direction again. And sometimes that's where healing begins. Not in perfection, but in progress. As the days passed, she found herself thinking about something she wished every wife knew. If parts of this story feel familiar, if you've ever felt lonely inside your marriage, if you've ever wondered whether you're asking for too much, I want you to hear this. You are not too much. You are not needy. You are not broken, and neither is your marriage, because sometimes the strongest marriages aren't the ones that never struggle. They're the ones that keep choosing each other through the struggle. Little by little, restoration began, not through grand gestures, not through dramatic moments, but through ordinary ones. A conversation before bed, a walk after dinner, a prayer together, a shared laugh, a lingering hug, small moments, simple moments. The kinds of moments that don't seem important at the time, yet somehow become the foundation of reconnection. Looking back, she realized something surprising. The hardest part had never been the distance. The hardest part was believing she shouldn't want more, believing she should silence her desire for connection, believing she should stop asking, stop hoping, stop longing. But God never created her heart to stop longing for intimacy, because intimacy isn't weakness. It's part of His design, the desire to be known, to be seen, to be chosen, to be connected. Those desires were never the enemy. They were invitations. Invitations to pursue deeper connection. Invitations to pursue healing. Invitations to pursue one another again. She remembered all the nights she had wondered, am I too emotional? Am I too sensitive? Am I asking for too much? And now she could finally see those questions differently. Because wanting connection doesn't make someone needy. It makes them human. It makes them a wife longing for the very thing marriage was created to provide. And slowly she began understanding something beautiful. Marriage was never designed to be merely functional. God didn't create marriage simply so two people could manage responsibilities together. He created it for friendship, for companionship, for vulnerability, for intimacy, for love, for being fully known and fully loved. And while no marriage experiences that perfectly, every marriage can move toward it. One intentional choice at a time. One conversation at a time. One act of grace at a time. One act of courage at a time. One act of love at a time. She realized she hadn't simply missed intimacy. She had missed him. His attention, his friendship, his presence, the feeling of being chosen. And as they continued reconnecting, those things slowly began returning, not all at once, but enough to remind her that restoration was possible. There is a particular loneliness that comes from feeling unseen by someone you love deeply. It's difficult to explain, because from the outside, everything may look fine. But inside, your heart aches for connection. If you've ever felt that loneliness, please hear this. You are not alone. Far more women carry this struggle than most people realize. Far more marriages wrestle with these questions than anyone talks about. And shame loses power the moment truth is spoken. The moment we stop hiding, the moment we stop pretending, the moment we stop believing we're the only ones, because we never were. One evening, she sat quietly with her Bible open in her lap. The house was peaceful. The room was quiet. And she found herself reflecting on how far they had come. Not because they had become perfect, but because they had become honest. And honesty had opened the door to healing. For so long she had asked, why am I like this? Why do I feel this way? What's wrong with me? But now she asked a different question. What is this desire trying to tell me? And the answer was simple. Her heart wasn't asking for perfection. It was asking for connection. And connection was worth pursuing. If this story feels familiar, let it be an invitation. Not an invitation to shame. Not an invitation to fear. Not an invitation to hopelessness, but an invitation to courage. An invitation to honesty. An invitation to hope. Because healing often begins with one conversation, one prayer, one step, one moment of vulnerability, one decision to stop hiding. And if nobody has told you lately, let me tell you now. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are deeply loved. You are deeply seen by God. And you are not alone. every strong marriage is built one intentional moment at a time, one act of grace at a time, one choice to love at a time, one choice to stay connected at a time. And no matter where your story is today, this does not have to be the end of it. Sometimes it's only the beginning.